it's Dena Tollefson and welcome to my studio. I'm so glad to have you here today. So today's painting is Acrylic, how to paint colorful and gestural black-eyed Susans. I'll be talking today about how to keep your painting loose and gestural and having a discussion of how to work with scaling if you have maybe like a sketch or something like that and you wanted to turn it into a larger painting, how to go about doing that using a grid method and some other methods. And then working with a toned canvas, I'll demonstrate how to do negative painting and then also show you how to pick that right paintbrush so that you can make confident strokes. So let's get painting. And started here with just a little mix of phthalo blue, red shade, and the yellow ochre mixed together to kind of just draw out the basic shape. And I started with a toned canvas, and that means if you see that golden color below, when you work with a toned canvas, and you can tone like I did yellow ochre, you could use a gray color, you can use red, orange, really any color you like. And what that does is that helps you when you're painting to then pick the colors that will go with it. And I like to use yellow ochre under all of my paintings whenever possible. I like that little bit of warmth. It's a mix of yellow and purple, and yellow ochre is its own color, but you can mix a version of that with yellow plus purple. And so it has kind of a warm and a cool color at the same time. Now, if you look off to the left, you'll see a little picture of the final painting. But what I also want to show you is how this painting started, or what the inspiration was for this painting. I have a Canyon Road Contemporary Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico, represents my originals, and they had a client who came in and had seen a little black-eyed Susan painting, it was 4x6, so it was 6 inches tall and 4 inches wide, just a little thing. And I have a picture of that on the right-hand side in a little gold frame. And they really liked that painting, but instead of, it was already sold, and so they said, hey, could the artist make something for us that was a very much larger version of that? So the gallery said yes and contacted me, and I said, oh yeah, that sounds great. So working from that little inspiration painting then, now the inspiration painting was 4 inches wide and 6 inches tall, which is a 2:3 ratio. But the clients wanted to have a much taller painting. And so what I did was I first did some thumbnail sketches and laid out how would I compose the painting if it was going to be in a more stretched out format and much larger. And then one way to do that, some of you might be familiar with the grid method, where you will draw some lines through your sketch, and then on your final canvas, you can then go in and put little marks so that you know that it will fit, that the larger painting will fit and match the proportions of your small little sketch that you did. So that's one way to do it. In this case, if you see I'm looking off to the right periodically, I have a photo of the little inspiration painting. Since that's been sold to a client, all I have is the original photo that I sent to the gallery when they originally posted the work. So I'm working from that little sketch or from that little photo, and I'm periodically looking at that for my proportions and my colors. So now taking some of the Mars Black and a large paintbrush, I'm working to, you'll see that I'm putting a lot of movement in the brush and swirling the brush around and that type of thing. I really like this energy that even in the underpainting, this energy that I feel can come across on the canvas if I were to just paint it, with straight lines and in a fussy way. I don't feel it would have the exuberance and the freedom that it does if it's just a swirling motion, a feeling of energy, that type of thing. So the first thing I'm doing is establishing this darkest dark, and this is the center of those black-eyed Susans. And I'll show you a little way that I can mix up a green. So I'm taking a tiny bit of that Mars Black and mixing it in with the primary yellow, and these are all golden paints, or paints from Golden Acrylic, heavy-bodied acrylic. And what I'll do is, as I'm getting closer in the color, I add a little bit more. You see that black is a very, very strong tinter. And so I'll just keep mixing it until I get the right level of green. And going for kind of a dark, warm green. You can see that there's a layer. So the first green that's under there was the drawing, and that was the yellow ochre plus phthalo blue red shade. Now this green I'm putting on top is, which has kind of a nuanced layering effect, is the primary yellow plus Mars Black. So you can see you can get green from both, but the first green is going to be more on the blue side, or more cool, and then the green that was created with the yellow plus the black is a warmer green. So now look at this giant brush. This is a way to get really loose and gestural marks. I'm working with a very, very large paintbrush. This is actually from the Home Depot. They have them everywhere at home improvement stores. This is paint stores. This is a Purdy brush. It's a house painting brush, and I love to work with that. I usually use those brushes to tone my canvas, but whenever I can, I will get out that large Purdy brush. This is I think it's either a 4-inch or a 3.5-inch brush, something like that. But it's got an angle on it, and I feel like the energy that you can create with a really large brush, I encourage you to use the largest brush that you can in your work. You'll feel the freedom in there. It's kind of scary. It's like, oh, if I come up to the edge of the painting, am I going to paint over it, or that type of thing? But you know, sometimes that will happen, and if it does, you can wipe back off with a cloth or with a little bit of a wet brush from another, a clean brush with a little bit of water, and get that cleaned off if you need to. But I actually like this unexpected feeling that you get by using the large brush. So back with the same brush now. I've rinsed the brush off and mixed up a color of using the phthalo blue red shade and the titanium white. And now, again, just staying with that big brush. Now, one thing I did notice as I'm painting it is I had rinsed the brush off and got it all the way clean and removed all the white, but I did not squeeze all of the water out. So I do have a little bit of dripping, which was annoying, but I'll show you how to fix that later if that happens to you when you inadvertently drip on an area that's painted. So if you watch it a little bit, you'll kind of see that little bit of blue over on the right-hand side leaf is starting to drip a little bit. But that happens, and if it does, it's no big deal. And sometimes people will leave drips in because it's part of the history of the painting. It's all, if you want to do that in your work, it can lend a little bit of organic nature and also a looseness. So it just depends when you're painting how loose or how tight you want your painting to be. But if you take a look at those drips down there, no problem. We just wipe right over that. I can wipe over that with the blue, and then I can go in with a smaller brush. I can either add more green or just a clean dry brush, and take that drip off if I don't want that from the blue. But I'm holding the brush in a loose way and just touching rather than petting the canvas, just kind of brushing across and thinking about being bold. And sometimes it helps if you have good music on, that type of thing, or some people will, to get the right inspiration, you maybe have TV on if there's a certain TV show that inspires you. So this technique that we're doing here is what's called negative painting. So if you'll see that the subject, which is the flowers themselves, the black-eyed Susans are the subject, and if you think about the blue and the white would be the negative areas or the background. You see that, and here I'm covering up or removing that little area, and no one will know that it was. But this idea of negative painting is where you go in and you carve out your shape by painting around it. So this is a way to paint. You can do positive painting where you're painting the color on top, but I'm allowing that a lot of the yellow ochre to show through. So in the final painting, there will be many areas in the center of the flowers, on the blooms, where the yellow ochre is very evident, and I want to be sure to preserve that. So now this purple that you see, the shadow area, the cast shadow from the flowers, I'm using the dark area of purple is the dioxazine purple directly from the tube, and then the lighter purple area, I've mixed up a couple different versions. One is dioxazine purple plus white, and then the other one is the purple plus some of the color that was used on the table, that blue color that's on the table. So that's kind of a way, and you can blend. I'm using just a small clean brush to kind of blend the edges slightly. I want to leave some of that loose gestural part, but I'm also going to blend a little bit. I want to have a mix of both. So when you're painting, you can decide how loose and how gestural you want your final painting to be, or how much tight and much more detail you want to put in, and you can do a mix of however much fits your feeling of what you're trying to convey with your work. So now you can see I've moved to a much smaller brush. That was a 3/4 inch low Cornell long handled brush. Now taking some permanent alizarin crimson and some pyrrole orange, mixing those together. I'm thinking about creating an interesting color to represent the Black-Eyed Susan's curved forms, or the area where it's curving. So we'll grab a little bit of our purple mix that we had. So that was the purple, blue, and white. And then now this complex color is also including the alizarin crimson and the pyrrole orange. And let's just take a small filbert brush. This is an American painter. I think this is a number. Gosh, I don't remember what number it is, but it's a smaller filbert. Maybe it's an 8 or a 10, I'm not quite sure. But I'm taking this color, interestingly, which looks more orange on the mixing surface on our gray palette, but up on the canvas it looks more pink, and that just shows how color is all relative. When you put one color next to another, how the colors will play against each other. And in my work, I'm aiming to have something very colorful and expressive, so I'm pushing those colors. When I look at the flower, I do grow these Black-Eyed Susans in my perennial bed, and when I look at the flowers, I'm thinking about extending the colors that I see to make them even more expressive. How far can I push the color in one direction to convey the emotion of feeling the beauty of the flower. Even with this small brush, I'm just thinking about making individual marks and leaving it loose and expressive. Picking the right size brush is super important when you're working. I started with these really large brushes, and now this is a 1-inch low Cornell flat with a long handle, and you'll see that I'm holding, in order to get a loose stroke, I'll hold the brush far at the end. I'm pretty far off the end of the handle there, and that helps when you move your wrist back and forth. It helps you get a nice a nice stroke that feels loose and expressive. And then if I want to get more detail, I'll hold the brush closer to the ferrule or closer to the brush, to that piece that holds the brush bristles in place next to the brush handle. That ferrule is that little metal piece. I'll hold it closer to the ferrule if I want to get more detail. But here I'm just scrubbing in some diarrhea yellow. Just nice and easy, thinking about where the light is hitting the flowers. There we go. And the idea too of using as large a brush as you can for the area is a little trick to make your work feel fresh and expressive. So I hope that you get a chance to watch my video on how to do art commissions. So the next step in this process is after I finish the underpainting, then I'll be sending a photo of that to the gallery and they'll share that with their client, and the client will have a say in if they want any modifications for the overall color scheme or want any kind of modifications for the composition. And then once I get the okay from the gallery that the client gives it a thumbs up, then I can go ahead and add all of the Daubism texture on the top. So I want to get that confirmation first from the client that the painting is going to have the color scheme and the overall look that they want before I add my texture, because once I put that texture on, it's really tricky to do any changes. So I want to make sure that we're on the track that we want. Now I'm feeling really confident about this painting. Sometimes if I have a subject that I am unsure of or not quite sure if the client is going to like it, I might make a second version and then offer up two versions. But I feel like since I know what they wanted when I started with that tiny little inspiration painting, I'm feeling very confident that this will work. There's always the option too, if they say they don't like it, then I could make it for sell it through another gallery or do that type of thing. Because this also, the colors fit in my wheelhouse. So now just taking a little filbert brush, I'm going to go ahead and show the indication of the center of the flower, and then now going back in and scrubbing that out to soften the edge. Here we go. Scrubbing the color over, that gives a softer, more diffused edge. Now going back to the 1-inch brush, go into our colors, the mix of orange, just brighten up those last little touches and being careful not to overwork the canvas. For some colorful and gestural black-eyed Susans. So now we've used these giant brushes, and the last step here would be to use the tiniest brush of all, and that's going to be the little tiny liner brush. So you'll find when you use a liner brush, it's got some long bristles, and you can take your acrylic paint and just add a tiny amount of water to it and make it so it makes it more like an ink-like consistency, and sign your name. So I hope that you have found this video to be helpful, and I hope that you'll come back and watch more of my videos, and I really appreciate that you're here. I hope that you'll subscribe and ring the bell so when I release another video, you'll know. Thank you so much for watching, and this is Dena Tollefson. Until next time, bye-bye.